Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of The Claim Game. This podcast is 8 years in the making. We've learned a lot of lessons. We have a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share, and we're going to make it kind of fun. So we're going to set up the revenue cycle management game board, and our goal here is to simplify the complex landscape of the board with real strategy and practical tools and tips to help you win at revenue cycle management. We're going to be drawing cards and making moves to optimize your practice's financial game.
Can I just ask, when you think about revenue cycle management or you think about what a typical practice owner thinks of when they think of revenue cycle management, what do you think comes to mind?
I think it becomes something that is necessary to deal with, but gets placed on the back burner, right? How many group practices have we seen that go or say, I need my billing department updated or effective, but it is just not the top priority. So many of them say that, and it is important, but it never gets the proper attention that it needs to.
I had a couple other things come to mind when I thought about revenue cycle management. I thought people are afraid of this. It's something that they know they need, but they don't know enough about it to know where things are buried.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it's something that is so painfully boring that they just are like, let me get someone else in here to who knows, who wants to be a nerd. So, you started talking about drawing cards and making moves, and I think that's great. And I just want to talk a little bit about why we chose to do that. Like, why are we making this into a game?
Yeah, because a game is perfectly encapsulates, it's the perfect metaphor for revenue cycle management. Not that your revenue is not important, not that your claims aren't important, but you're playing a game that can either be played, that has rules, the game has rules, and it can be played well, or it can be played really poorly. And so I think for us to analyze revenue cycle management in terms of a game helps make revenue cycle management, insurance billing, not as stuffy or boring.
Right. So It's not as scary and it's more fun.
It is more fun.
There are things that are really interesting about it. Like if you're someone who likes puzzles, this is going to be very interesting to you. But regardless of if you like it or not, if you're a practice owner, you need to know it.
That's right.
Like, I'm a business owner. I don't need to know how all of my vendors do their work, but I want to understand how it works so that I know what to look for. If there's issues or to evaluate it if it's going well. Like one of my least favorite things as a business owner is to not understand, like where we always have issues with marketing, for example. And I hate not understanding what should be happening in a marketing system within my company. So I don't have any interest in doing marketing. It would be really sad if I did it, but I want to know what I'm doing enough to evaluate if it's going well.
Yeah, you need to know if your billing department is successful or not. And so we're going to give you the path out of the wilderness with this podcast. And so I think in this first round, what we want to do is introduce...
What is a round, Jeremy?
Yeah, a round is a podcast episode. So in this podcast episode, we're going to give you an overview of all 6 of the revenue cycle management domains. And we're going to give you strategic action and discussions to come. So if you think about a game board, you have to get on the board. And the first territory, if you will, that we have to start with is credentialing.
And I would consider credentialing to be a territory that you're stuck in until you're given permission to access the rest of the board. So because this is the claim game, I'm going to try to compare each concept to a game as much as I can. And I play a lot of sorry and trouble in my house because I have little kids. And so I don't know if you've ever played that game, but if you haven't, you have to roll a specific number in order to start moving around the board. And so I would liken credentialing to that. Like, you cannot even access the board until you have reached this step. There is a qualifier here. So you will be stuck at home until this qualification is met. And so I want to start by clarifying that this domain implies that we are talking with practices who do take insurance. So if you are a private pay practice, your game board will look a little bit different. You won't be stuck at home base in this regard.
Yeah,
there are other obstacles to running a private pay practice, but this isn't one of them. So what is credentialing?
Yeah, so credentialing as we mean it here is the process of becoming in network with insurance partners so that you can begin to see patients that carry insurance policies at in-network rates. So if you are in an area where the largest concentration of people in your area take Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't just fork over money because you went to grad school and you have an MPI and a tax ID and a business. You have to go through a very particular set of procedures in order to become in network and have a contract with that insurance company. In short, if the goal of the game is to make money using insurance relationships, you can't even play the game if you don't have the step completed. You're not even in the game yet.
Yeah, and we're going to spend a lot of time in future episodes diving into credentialing at a deeper level. Today, we're just laying out the landscape, but credentialing is a behind-the-scenes foundational process. If your providers aren't properly credentialed, and we will talk about what properly means, it doesn't really matter how great your services are because you won't get reimbursed, at least not from insurance.
That's right.
So we will talk more about this in the future.
Yeah, so why is this domain important? Help us work through. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but what is it about this domain that makes it critical?
Well, imagine that you were trying to score points in a game, but you don't actually have a player on the board. So credentialing ensures that the player piece is one on the board, but also that you're legitimate in the eyes of the payer, and the payer is, we're going to use interchangeably with insurance company. The revenue cycle can't begin until you have a player on the board.
This is a big step, right? I mean, it's a complicated, help us understand what a newly minted clinician might be feeling when they approach this particular territory on the board.
Oh man, I think this feels like an impossible hurdle for a lot of people. There's so little known about the process. It's different from payer to payer. There's tons of paperwork that you have to fill out, something called CAQH, whatever that is. That I have to submit a bunch of information to just so that they can verify that I'm telling the truth. And then once I'm done submitting everything, I hear nothing. It's like a black hole. I submit it all, and depending on the payer, I'm going to get either silence or maybe I'll get a status update that says, paperwork pending.
But we heard of one clinician at a recent conference where they had submitted their, I think it was Medicare credentialing for 14 months. Is that right?
Yeah.
It was the better part of a year. And every time they got to the last hurdle, it was sent back and they had to start at square one.
And I'm not even sure that they've submitted it properly.
Who knows?
I know the credentialer has been in tears. It can be a really painful hurdle to even get on the board.
But it can be worth it. And I think we're going to talk about in future episodes, and why you would take insurance and why it's worth going through that quest to get credentialed. Yeah. So once you're out of the home-based territory of credentialing on the game board, will you stay out of this area moving forward? Is it like a one and done, you're out, no more?
Mostly, but yeah, you can move to the next part of the board. You will have to come back to this part of the board occasionally. There's something called reattestation where you have to reconfirm that you're telling the truth and that none of your qualifications have changed. You also might be forced back to home. Like, there are plenty of games that, return to home.
That's very true.
If you don't do it properly the first time, or you don't think long term about how you're going to do your credentialing. So like I said, we're going to spend, I think we have 8 or 9 episodes after this one where we're going to specifically talk about credentialing. So we have a lot more to come on this. But we want to make sure of 2 things. 1, you credential with the information that will allow you to scale. And 2, you credential the same way on every insurance panel. or you will likely find yourself back at home
That's right.
and with a massive headache.
Yeah, enough said there. So it's very true. And credentialing issues are some of the hardest systemic issues to fix. And once we finish credentialing, once a provider is ready to finish credentialing, are they ready to start moving around the game board? Are they in play now? What do you think?
Technically, they can move around the game board, but there's no one else on the board yet.
That's right. You can't play the game
You can't
alone.
play the game alone. So the second territory on the board right after credentialing is patient registration. If credentialing is what gets you qualified to play on the board, patient registration is what gets other people on the board to play against you. And while we don't want to think about your patients as your adversaries, they certainly aren't. They have to be on the board in order for business to be done. And I'm hoping that we'll have this beautiful graphic that shows up on the screen here, where we have some arrows with a beautiful diagram of all 6 of the territories together that you'll see at some point, and it will be linked in the show notes. But let's say we're playing a game like Monopoly. I would consider getting patients registered. I would liken that to having property owners selling property to you as you're going around the board. If they aren't selling their property or they don't have it listed for sale, you can't take your game piece around the board and do business with that person. You need to get that vendor listed properly in order to start doing business. And so when working with insurance patients, patient registration processes can make the difference between really smooth billing with strong patient relationships, because this is the first impression that a patient will have in your practice, and billing nightmares with patients that don't come back. So they need to know what to expect when working with you, and you need to know the details from them about their insurance so that you can bill their appointments properly.
This is a process that's come under a lot of scrutiny lately. I think there was a insurance company in New York that was fined for something called ghost networks, and that's when a patient calls a practice and the phone number's not working, or they email a practice, the email's not working. So patient registration, while it sounds drab perhaps, is actually extremely important to even get your practice moving. And we need to have that nailed down. So Kathryn, describe to all of us listening and to me what can go wrong when this is done poorly.
Man, a lot can go wrong. First of all, and we aren't even talking about billing or revenue cycle management yet, the patient can decide from their patient registration experience not to be your patient.
So, Kathryn, describe to me and all of us listening what you think or what you've seen go wrong when patient registration is done poorly or not good.
A lot can go wrong. First of all, I just want to clarify that we aren't even talking about billing or revenue cycle management yet. The patient can decide from their patient registration experience not to be your patient at all. Did they like your website? Were they on hold for a long time? Were the expectations stated clearly and simply? Was the portal registration a nightmare? Did you get assigned to a provider with a poor match, etc.? I mean, there are so many places that this can go wrong. This is, I kind of shy away from stuff like user experience, customer experience. Like, people can get really annoyed by that, but this is where that is, and it matters so much. There are a lot of places that this can go wrong just from a reputation standpoint. Mm-hmm. But talking about billing and revenue cycle management, if you are experiencing a high volume of claim rejections or denials, patient registration is a good place to look first. If you don't keep ID like licenses and insurance cards on file, investigation into that problem could be a nightmare, because there's no way to even check that your records are correct. Because I might have a legal name on my license that differs from what I have on my insurance card. Maybe I have a middle initial. Maybe I have a different spelling of my last name. Maybe, I don't know, there's so many. Maybe I have divorced parents and I have changed my last name. Maybe I have a hyphenated last name. So many things. Date of birth, middle initial, patient's mom is the subscriber instead of the dad. So many things can go wrong. And other than credentialing, I would say this is the number one reason that you're going to have claim rejections and denials.
Yeah, I would say our team probably, I don't think this is an exaggeration, but probably every week has to deal with some hiccup from a front office person, or there's a provider group that's moving too fast that misses a detail, and they have to go back to the clinician or the practice owner and ask, to redo something in patient registration. And it's one of the reasons why you need to have accountability there. But it is also, I think Kathryn nailed it. If you're having issues downstream, this is a great place to start. Isn't collecting though, like when our team talks about patient registration and we talk to clinicians about this stuff, isn't collecting card images and filling out insurance or intake paperwork rather standard? I mean, you would think that this would be 101 in private practice, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, but I've seen a lot of practices either do a poor job of collecting that information at the front end or that don't ask for updated information
Oh,
at
that's
the
true.
start of every appointment.
That's right.
I had to go get an ultrasound I'm pregnant and we're having our third baby. And I went to the office and I didn't have my ID on me randomly. I had it in the diaper bag. I brought my purse. It was one of those things where I didn't have the kids with me. And she said, "Hey, I need a copy of your driver's license. Do you have one?" And I could not get it to upload to the portal. And she said, "Don't worry about it. I'll send a link to your phone when you get home. Take a picture of it." And I feel ashamed that I never sent that in. And that's exactly what happens.
That is exactly.
It's exactly what happened. Like, I just never submitted it because I got busy or I got home and my kids needed me for something. And I just never went back and uploaded it. And I'm a responsible person who knows that that's important, and I still didn't submit it.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's what happens. And she could have turned me away. She never followed up with me. She could have called. I mean, there are lots of things. But if there's a problem with my claims, I won't be surprised.
That's right. Because what if the address is wrong or...
I'm almost positive I have a middle initial.
Yeah.
And not everybody does.
Yeah. And so a claim is going to come back rejected and it's going to be a whole thing. And
yeah,
I think you're going to find more often than not that's exactly what's happening. People are fast. They have lives. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it should be standard. But there are various reasons that this is not always the case. It could be a staffing problem. It could be a process problem. It could be a paperwork problem. You could have a really poor patient portal that's really obtuse and hard to access. You could accept patients that don't have their cards with them on file.
That's right.
And that was the first time I had learned that I even needed to submit my ID. So that's another thing. Like, there are lots of things that you can do before the appointment even starts to inform the patient of what they need to bring to the appointment.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll go over all that for sure. But what is included in patient registration as a whole, in your opinion or in our opinion? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so far I've really only described the onboarding process from initial contact to like scheduling, patient being physically in the office in the waiting room. And I want to be clear that patient registration as a process is not complete until the first checkout has happened. So this would include having the patient submit a payment authorization form to keep a form of payment on file, charging them for that day's appointment cost, or setting up some kind of payment plan, and scheduling a follow-up appointment if applicable. So that all needs to happen as part of the full patient registration before a patient leaves the office. I have heard a lot of practices that are encouraging this new KPI tracker. I don't know if it's new. It's not new, but it's become popularized, I suppose, where you look at patient retention by provider. And I think it's a great metric. But as someone who specializes in RCM, it's not a complete picture of if the provider's retention rate is low, because the office admin is not if the office admin is not following solid checkout procedures, then you can lose a patient because of patient registration. So I don't think it's a reflection on the provider so much as it could be a reflection on your patient registration processes. Do you have really clear SOPs for how this should run in your office? Standard operating procedures is what that stands for.
Yeah, so now that we have the game piece by properly credentialing, let's go back really quick. So patient registration can include the management of a wait list and referral sources as well, which affects your reputation and cash flow. And I think we've seen some practices do that really well. We've seen some practices do that really not so well. And what we want to do with the podcast and all of the education resources that we have available is help you get closer to 99% on this process.
I mean, if this is a reputation builder, this particular territory on the board, I think about when you send out patient satisfaction surveys, for example. You want to get some ratings for your office so you can make improvements. I almost guarantee you that if they've spent 40 minutes in your waiting room filling out paperwork they don't understand after they parked somewhere that they didn't understand, they're not going to be thinking about how well they had bedside manner. Like the provider might be able to make up for some of the deficit that now exists in your reputation, but it's going to be a way bigger barrier to overcome if you have really bad patient registration experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of our friends that we've worked with before says that when she buys a building, parking on site is a non-negotiable. So I mean that speaks to how important all of that is leading up to the actual appointment sessions. Now that we have a game piece, by properly credentialing and someone to do business with, by finding and registering clients, can you begin to actually play the game on the remaining territories? Yes or no?
I don't want to say it, but almost. Yeah, yes, you can. At this point, there are different ways to navigate the remaining 4 territories, which are eligibility and benefits, payment posting, aging follow-up, and claim submission. However, we have found over lots of trial and error over many years that there is a proper order to this. Practices all over the country do it in different orders. We do it in this order, and we'll explain why as we go. I'm going to mention that order again. It's eligibility and benefits, payment posting, aging follow-up, and claim submission.
Are we going to talk about why in that order soon?
We will.
Okay, great.
We will talk about, yes, we will, especially the last 3. They have to be in that order.
Okay, great. So let's start with eligibility and benefits. It's the 3rd territory. Walk us through this process, Kathryn.
I mean, this is the process by which you verify that your vendor, which we discussed about in Monopoly, it's actually your patient, is both a good match with your game piece, you are eligible for business, and how much they have to pay based on their arrangement of benefits. So eligibility and benefits, or E&B as it is often referred to, helps set the expectation for the relationship between you, the game piece, and the patient, the entity paying you. This is technically part of patient registration, but we're calling it out separately for some very important reasons. One, it is often performed by a different person within the office than the rest of patient registration. So if an admin does patient registration, typically a biller will start the billing processes in eligibility and benefits. And then 2, this information should be checked for updates often. So it is not a one-time process like the majority of the rest of patient registration. So if you're watching on YouTube, there is an image that's going to pop up here, and I will do my best to explain it for those of you who are only listening. I did already mention this because I love this image so much. But first we had credentialing, and it is the first step to playing the game. And then we had patient registration right next to it, and it feeds into it. And then those are the 2 one-time qualifiers. And then we have the remaining 4 territories, which will happen in a cycle, starting with eligibility and benefits. You have an arrow with credentialing and an arrow with patient registration, both pointing to this cycle that's feeding. It's like a life cycle. It's feeding into this cycle. And then this part of the cycle moves over and over and over again. Every day you keep repeating this cycle. And then once you're in this cycle, you mostly stay there.
And it requires management, right? Revenue cycle management.
It sure does.
That's right. So if we're now at the beginning of this repetitive repeating cycle, what's involved in eligibility and benefits?
Yeah.
Yeah, walk us through that.
Well, you first have to, actually sometimes this is referred to as verification of benefits, but eligibility and benefits is a little bit more
complete.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but you have to verify first that the patient is eligible for services, meaning that the patient has an active policy with a network plan that the provider that they want to see is in network with. That's step 1. Do they match? Are they both green? Green means go. And then 2, that it covers the service that you will be providing at in-network rates. So just because you are eligible does not mean that you don't need further eligibility, like a prior authorization. So this is the E, eligibility, the E of E&B. You might find that the patient can be eligible for services, but that they need a referral, which is that prior authorization I was just referring to, in order to process at in-network rates for an appointment with that specific provider. Then, and we're going to talk so much more about all of this. So again, this is just a flyby. We will talk so much more about what prior authorizations are, good processes for them, etc. Then you have more work to do to obtain the prior authorization, which then needs to be submitted on the claim in order to process properly. That's just eligibility. Then you need to know at what rate the insurance company will cover this appointment, what benefits, the B of E and B, does the patient have. It will not affect your total comp, your allowed amount. That is determined on your fee schedule when you sign the contract. What we want to know is how much will be paid from the patient and how much will be paid from the insurance company. So if the appointment is $100, you know you're going to make $100 for this whatever amount of time it is the patient responsible for $20 of that? Are they responsible for all of it? Are they responsible for none of it?
Who knows? We got to ask.
We need to know, and we will determine through checking benefits what portion is to be paid by the patient and what portion will be waiting for from the insurance company. So another nifty image that I just love so much that you can find in our book here, actually, Insurance Billing Basics by Jeremy Zug. It's this image that we'll also try to get on the screen and into the show notes. But there are 3 benefit stages that will help determine this split. The first is the deductible stage. And in this stage, your patient owes 100% until that deductible is met. There's the cost sharing stage, which is some split between insurance and patient that I can't even tell you right now, which is why you have to check. You either have a copay that's a flat rate or a co-insurance, which is a percentage of the total cost.
We know math scares a lot of therapists, but this math is pretty simple. We'll go over it a lot. It's just basic algebra. It'll be really fun, actually. It'll be a little revisit of 9th grade algebra.
I would say 6th grade.
6th grade algebra,
I mean,
even
it's
better.
really easy. And I don't mean to make anybody feel dumb by saying that, because we're going to teach you how to understand it. It's more a barrier to understanding than it is. The math itself is very simple.
Very simple.
And then there's the 3rd stage, which is the out-of-pocket maximum stage, in which stage the patient owes nothing and the insurance company will pay the whole
It's a great stage.
So we will go over this in much greater detail in future episodes. Rounds. I keep saying
that's right. Well, it's all right.
rounds,
We'll get
future times around the table.
We'll get the language right. So as you mentioned earlier that this process should be done more than just the first time a patient is seen, which I agree with, and everybody in our team, if they were sitting here, would be applauding right now. But can you expound on this and why it's part of the cycle?
Yeah, so you should check for one thing every time a patient is seen, and then one thing periodically. So every time a patient enters your office, you should verify that there is no change to their insurance, no new policy, no termed policy. So sometimes they actually don't know, and you just have to know the date on the policy, which you should be checking when you check their eligibility and benefits. And then that there's no change of address. There are a couple other things that can change, but that needs to get checked every time. And usually if you walk into an office, you're probably really familiar with, is there any change to any of the information? That is asked for a reason, and it's an important reason, because this can change both their eligibility and their benefits if those things have changed. Oh, if something has changed, a new comprehensive E&B check should be performed. You have to do the whole thing if anything has changed.
Well, that's right, because we haven't even arrived at like a carve out, right? Somebody could have Blue Cross Blue Shield.
You're introducing these.
I know, but it's so important to think through all of the hiccups that can go on here, right? And so, yeah, again, very, very important.
Yeah. On the other hand, if nothing has changed and you just saw the patient recently, and when I say recently, it's kind of subjective depending on what type of industry you're in, but you likely don't need to check anything. However, if the patient was in the deductible stage, for example, that's first stage, and they're close to meeting their deductible, it is really highly recommended that you check the patient's accumulations, which means how much they have paid toward their deductible within their policy year. Because if they happen to have met their deductible with your session or right before, I keep saying session, with your appointment or right before your appointment, you might find that they're in a different benefit stage now and they might only owe a flat copay or coinsurance. So it helps you have more control over the accuracy of your patient collections, because you would not want to have thousands of dollars on their account balance that you have to end up paying back to them.
Yeah, and you can't assume that your services are the only ones that they're receiving in the middle of a week or a month, right? So depending on the cadence of your services to your patient, you might find that they went to a chiropractor or they had a different medical thing happen and they met their deductible. So you can't assume anything in this process of your practice, honestly.
Yeah, if you see your patient only once or twice a year, I'd probably just plan to do a
Oh,
comprehensive
yeah,
check.
for sure.
But if you're seeing them monthly, I might just look at accumulations.
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty logical that we would go from eligibility and jump, or this, yeah, eligibility to claim submission, right? We've seen that a lot. A lot of private practices go, well, I'll check eligibility, and then of course I would submit all of my claims because it's the next logical leap to make. But that's not the jump that you are saying that we want to make. You're saying we want to make a jump into payment posting.
And it does seem that the claim submission would be the initiation of the cycle, but it is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. And I want to shout it from the rooftops. We recommend moving to payment posting next because you will likely catch issues with your claims there. The remaining 2 territories after payment posting are aging follow-up and claim submission. If you don't do payment posting first, you will waste time in aging follow-up researching denial statuses that otherwise would have been completely apparent to you if you had just read the records that were sent from the insurance company. So that would be either an explanation of benefits, an EOB, or an electronic remittance advice, an ERA. This episode was brought to you by Practice Solutions. At Practice Solutions, we identify and apply the right billing solution for your unique practice, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all approach. This might look like our full-service, done-for-you billing, where you can take a hands-off stance, a practice health check to identify where you can optimize your RCM processes, or using our practical tools within the Hourglass Learning Hub. One of our billing solutions will help simplify the complexities of working with insurance payers so you can have peace of mind, consistent cash flow, and more time to focus on your clinical mission. Founded in 2017, Practice Solutions was built to alleviate the administrative burden for private practice owners by installing smarter billing systems. We believe your time is better spent with patients, not billing issues. If you're ready to stop stressing about billing and start loving your practice again, visit practicesoul.com today. That's practicesol.com. Mention the promo code TheClaimGame to get 15% off your first 3 invoices for done-for-you billing, 15% off your practice health check, or 15% off your first year in the Hourglass Learning Hub. Again, that's promo code TheClaimGame. If you had just read those first before you did aging follow-up, you likely wouldn't have to research, I don't know, hopefully all of your claims, but definitely most. Just
for sure.
So if you move to the claim submission territory before you move to this territory, you might submit claims that had fixable errors, which can delay your cash flow. So let's say I submitted a claim that resulted in a denial that I could have caught before in payment posting. So usually what happens is that a payment record will come into your system, into your EHR, and it will show that the claim denied, but it will automatically create a new claim to submit for that. So if you go straight to claim submission,
that makes sense.
You're going to resubmit the claim that has problems accidentally.
That's right.
So we recommend doing payment posting first so you don't accidentally resubmit a claim that has errors or submit claims for the same patient at future dates of service.
Because then you're going to get those claims are going to have errors.
You're likely going to have the same errors.
Yeah. And you'll have spent money on the claim submission. And you'll have to do all the follow-up just a week later or so.
Yeah.
And you'll be kind of stuck in this never-ending cycle of struggle.
There are 3 problems with it. It's inefficient because you're going to have to redo it costs you money because you have to submit the claims, and the claim submission usually costs money, and it delays your cash flow.
That's right. So, I think I read recently, I'll have to get the source again, but I think it was Availity that said that the average reworking of a denial costs the average practice $25 to $35. And so it's not just the claim delay. It's like you're spending money on somebody to rework this stuff. So that makes a lot of sense that you'd want to do it in that order. So what is it that you are accomplishing in payment posting? I'm sure there are several things, but work us through some of those.
Well, you should be enrolled to receive payment records from all of your in-network insurance companies and out-of-network, frankly, but primarily your in-network, so that you have to do as little manual follow-up as possible. What this ensures is that every time a claim is processed by the insurance company, they will send you a record, EOB or ER, of how the claim was processed. The ideal here is that they process for
payment.
Thank you.
Payment revenue. Top line.
But if they don't, and this is called a denial, and we're going to go over the difference between what a denial and a rejection is in future episodes. Rounds. They will send information about the nature of the denial. Like, what was the reason?
Yeah, it usually comes in a really obtuse code, like CO 423. And then you have to translate.
Duplicate claim.
Yeah, you have to translate insurance language into normal people language, and then you have to go from there.
And there are shortcuts to do this. We will also go over that.
Yes.
So your electronic health record, your EHR, should allow you to enroll to receive the record in an electronic version called an ERA, which makes reconciling these claims so much easier.
So much faster.
Like, you'll get the same information on an EOB, but what's so nice about it coming in as an ERA is that it will link to the claim that was submitted, and it will attempt to reconcile it automatically. And so you'll be able to see the whole story, the whole audit trail of what happened with this claim. So with that record, you will post every payment that is received to close out the open claims. That's how you close out a claim, is you receive a payment or you write it off. I mean, those are your two options for final determination. There are things you can do in between to get to payment.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you are either going to close this claim out by submitting payment or posting payment or writing it off, or you send it to a secondary to get a second payment. Alternatively, you can use that record to help you follow up on the denial. Usually denials are fixable. You just have to understand them, and there sometimes are different rules for how to fix them from insurance company to insurance company, but there's not really anything new under the sun unless new policies come out. But there's usually like a standard like set of 10 reasons.
Yeah, there are not.
You're going to get your claim denied.
Yeah, and if you have a high volume of claim denials, something else is going on.
Yes.
You should not be receiving a high volume of claim denials. So if you are listening to this on the way to your practice and you know you're going to show up and your biller is going to say, we got 40 denials today, I would submit to you that there is a bigger problem and you are in the exact right place. So Kathryn, is that it with payment posting?
Mostly, I mean, you're going to run into it like the additional things like secondary claim submission or something that happens in E&B that we didn't really even say here, but we will, is that your eligibility and benefit checks can often be wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean that usually it's in the benefit side, like where your patient is eligible, but you show that they had a deductible, but their service was actually covered with just a $20 copay. And so what happens when you get a payment record is you'll get to see if there's a difference between what you checked and how they processed. And then you have to fix that, and you have to communicate it to the patient, and you have to either refund or collect it. So that's what makes your E&B checks and your E&B processes so important, because when you get to payment posting, you can have a lot of work.
Yeah, and garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, and if you have a high volume of that happening for one payer, you likely need to figure out a different way to check your E&B.
Yeah, that's
because something is wrong.
Alternatively, you can have gold in and gold out, which is what makes private practice so attractive, right?
Yes, it can be so clean.
Right. And then that's right. That's the idea, right? And then we move to aging follow-up, which is where you take all of those denials from payment posting and pull any other outstanding claims from your insurance aging report within a predetermined date range.
How do you predetermine the date range? Like what is a good parameter for what do I pull? So obviously I'm going to follow up on all the most recent denials that I get from payment posting. But then if I go to my aging report and I have a ton more, what do I do?
Well, that's a good question, Kathryn. Every practice is a little different, but I think it's up to your biller and how bad your insurance aging report looks. Now, if that's a new term to you, insurance aging report,
Welcome.
I would pause.
That's great. You're in the right place.
You're in the right place, but pause the episode and go ask your biller for one. Or go ask your EHR to help you find where to get one. And then don't have a small heart attack when you look at it, because I think that it's really important that we look at that. So we'll get into strategy when we do a deep dive into this territory. But typically, you want to tackle your oldest and largest balances first to avoid something called timely filing write-off. And that means that you didn't get to it in time and the insurance company now won't pay. We use something that we developed over we've been doing this for a while. We've been doing revenue cycle management for some time, and we developed something called a claim management spreadsheet to pull, organize, and attack our aging claims so that we can keep the activity record straight. You know who touched it last, what they did, call reference numbers, next steps. Once all the information is organized into an easy to follow format, you just start running through either insurance company portals or by calling the provider services lines at the insurance companies to get a really clear picture of why a claim denied. And this is where playing the game becomes really fun, because you now get to joust, right, with the insurance company for revenue that should rightfully be yours. And so if you can, then you can correct it, resubmit the claim, get the insurance company to reprocess, get them to process at the right amount. That's a simplified explanation for our first round here, but that's a general overview of aging follow-up, and that's where the heavy lifting comes from.
I mean, sometimes it's as easy as the rep saying, yeah, this should have been processed differently. I'm just going to send it back for reprocessing. And then you take their name and the reference number for your call and you follow up in 1 to 2 weeks to see that it's working, and that's it. Or you receive a payment record and then you're done. Or it gets as hard as, well, you have to void the first submission and then you have to write the name of the voided claim on the second. It can get really...
So, Kathryn, the claim management spreadsheet, is this a tool that we're just hiding? Are we just sitting on the claim management spreadsheet tool?
It used to be.
Yeah.
But is not anymore. So that will actually be coming to some of our learning hub that's coming.
Yeah, for available.
Actually, at the time this airs, it will be
publicly available
so to you for a small subscription fee.
If you want to go there, the link will be in the show notes. So I noticed when we were talking just now that this territory is called aging follow-up and not insurance aging follow-up. Why is that? Why it's such a broad term?
What a good observation. Yes. If you didn't know this, like I was talking about with the E&B and how I might have $100 and $50 is paid by insurance and $50 is paid by the patient, there is a report for both your insurance company collections and your patient collections that is organized by, on the insurance report, it's insurance company, how old it is. So it's called an aging report. So it's in different categories of age. And on the patient aging report, similarly, it's patient names, aging category, and the balances in the middle. So aging follow-up should encompass both your insurance aging and your patient aging, so that you can collect everything that's outstanding. You work an insurance aging report very similarly to a patient aging report, but the difference would be that you need to have something called a soft collections and a hard collections process for your office.
Oh, you said the C word.
Collections.
Yeah, dangerous word.
I know, and sometimes it's necessary, and this is why your patient registration and checkout procedures are so important.
That's
because
right.
Honestly, the best course of action is to collect the payment because I have a good record of what they owe while they're still in the office.
Yeah, that's right. And so you'd work this aging...
This is soft collections, right?
Right, yeah. So soft collections means that you would work this aging by following how old the balance is, and you would follow a protocol based on how old the balance is, right? When my patient's balance is 1 day old, for example, I send an email, and then an email every week after that until it hits 30 days. Then I send a letter in the mail, and then I call the patient, and then maybe if they come in for another session, we're like, hey, we got to get payment like right now. And so, but let's say those front office procedures are less than sterling. By the time my patient balance is 90 plus day old, now we start to use the hard collections process. And I know this is going to make those of you listening bristle because you've either had to do that or you've had that process done to you. And it doesn't have to look like that exactly, but we need a process similar to that, a determined protocol that you follow day in and day out and week in and week out. You also need a payment plan policy and a financial hardship policy, all things we are going to go over in greater detail as we walk through each territory individually.
Yeah. Every quarter or so, you should see both your insurance aging report and your patient aging report trending down in totals over 90 days aged. If you aren't seeing this trend, you are not working your aging well enough, or you don't have good enough processes, or you have a hiring problem. Or you have really bad partners.
That's right.
That could be it too.
And you have agency which is what we're trying to communicate here, that in the game, you're never just boxed in. You have levers to pull, and we're here to tell you exactly what to do when you see certain trending. So you should ideally see an increase in your aging, right? In the, what would you say, the 1 to 30 days category, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think you would at least want it to remain static. Like you don't necessarily have to be a practice. It's always growing if you've arrived where you want to be. But it really depends on good claim submission procedures and good marketing, good patient registration, good retention. But you need good claim submission procedures to keep your cash flow steady. So a claim, this is our last territory, everybody. A claim is ready for submission when an appointment is complete and a clinical note has been completed by the provider.
That's very important.
It has to be done. And that seems to be a hang up for a lot of practices. Once a claim is ready, you have to do some data checking to make sure that the information on the claim is accurate, meaning that the information on the patient information matches the cards on file on the patient intake forms, that the procedure that happened is coded properly, etc., and that the rates are correct, that the modifiers are there, that prior auths are on the form, etc. I mean, there's lots of things to look at.
There are. And going back to the note issue, it makes sense why a lot of clinicians struggle with this, right? Like when I was working in community mental health and when Kathryn was working in private practice in Chicago, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. And especially if you're coming out of the agency world where you're expected to do 40 patient hours a week, no overtime, get your notes done, have lunch, build rapport, and go to the company party, it's very tough. And so it's understandable. And we're not trying to sound stuffy in any way. We understand that it's a tough thing to get there and get all your notes done. But it is very important to make sure, one, you stay compliant, and two, you keep the claims moving.
Right. So like with claim submission, just talking about that again, going back to data checking, if this is the patient's first appointment or a new insurance card is being used for a pre-existing patient, there's just a lot more data that needs to be checked the first time it goes out. There's also things like limits to prior auths. So maybe you have, enough for a specific date range, and once that date range is ended, that prior authorization is no longer going to populate on the claim. You either need to renew that or you could be out of luck.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
You got to check those things. Yeah. As far as frequency goes for claim submission, I'm going to be honest and say there is not a great advantage to daily claim submission because most insurance companies don't pay on a consistent schedule. Some do, but most don't. They do something called controlling the spend, which means they pay when it makes sense for them, so long as they are maintaining those contractual obligations. So there is some advantage to weekly or biweekly claim submission if you're able to batch claims for the same patients being seen, as this can be a cost saving to you per submission. But that really depends on what type of industry you're in. If you don't see patients that frequently, then there's really no benefit to weekly or biweekly submissions either. I don't agree with you.
No, okay.
I don't agree with you. I don't think that the answer is just send them. I actually think you need to determine in your office what their process is.
Oh, there you go.
It can be, if there's no advantage to you for batching claims, then my only suggestion is have a process.
Okay. Well, there you go. So why do you need a stated process or frequency for this if there's really no benefit? Shouldn't you just crack at it daily?
You can. You certainly can. But there are some reasons that I think having a process will help. It will help set the expectations for when those clinical notes need to be complete. I think there's something psychological that happens there. Even if it's, hey, at 5 p.m. every day, your notes have to be submitted, or by 8 a.m. every morning. It can be daily, as long as that is a clearly stated expectation in your office. It also gives the person submitting claims better direction for claim review before submission. When are they doing it? When should they be looking at rejections? So I just have found over time that if you have a predetermined cadence within your practice, that is really what's advantageous to you. And it goes a lot smoother in your office.
Yeah, there's some accountability there. There's expectation. There's rhythm. People do really well with rhythm if they know what's coming down.
I mean, this is, like I had mentioned, this is the place on the board where you're going to receive rejections from the clearinghouse. We're going to talk about what those terms are.
What a tough word, too. Rejection.
I
Just
know.
straight up.
And it
harsh.
sounds so much worse than denial, but it's actually not worse.
It's not worse. It's actually better.
So, having a cadence for claim submission will allow you to check for those rejections and resolve them, because you have to resolve them ideally. You either have to hold off on submitting the resubmission or you have to resolve them before you can submit them. And so it lets you do that before the next round of claim submissions occurs. At this point, I'm going to add a couple more images here as well to help show the difference between a denial and a rejection. So there's this visual of an ideal claim path, which I'm just going to pull up for myself. But it starts with the completion of a progress note. That is the beginning of a clean claim path. And then you submit the claim after properly reviewing it. And then it goes to something called a clearinghouse. And the clearinghouse is an intermediary between your EHR and the insurance company. They reformat all the information that is submitted from your EHR. They check for small data errors on the claim, and they get it ready to then be passed along to the insurance company to be processed properly. If you receive a rejection, it has come from the clearinghouse. And there should be another image. It's going to come up. It's got a big X through this part of the clean claim path. It will then bounce back into your EHR, and it should have bright red letters that say rejection. I don't know. Not all EHRs are the same. But it will come back into some part of your EHR that indicates that it's a rejection. But let's say that that doesn't happen and that the clearinghouse reformats everything. They don't find any data errors and they forward it to the payer or the insurance company. Then the payer will process it for payment, okay? According to two things, provider credentials and patient benefits. So if there are no errors on either of those things, then payment will be received, and that is the end of the claim path. However, as we know, there are often things that can go wrong there, and that's where the payer or the insurance company will be the one to kick it back. And that will come through not into your EHR in a special place, but on your ERA or on your EOB. That is called a denial, and those are harder to fix. Not harder, more involved.
Definitely.
More involved. So obviously the ideal is that results in payment. But if it comes back from the clearinghouse, it's a rejection. If it comes back from the insurance company, it is a denial. And those should be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, wonderful. But if, So we talked about claim rejecting. I'm very excited to talk about that part. It should be very fun. So that's the landscape of the board, all 6 territories. So when you start your...
Oh, remember that image? Arrow cycle?
That's right. That's right. Arrow cycle. So that'll be a good one to put up in your office and to train your billing team on, or your front office staff, or even your clinicians. It'll give them a very good high-level view of what you're playing on.
Yeah, because when you start running your revenue cycle management processes every day, you will start again within that cycle on E and B. So like when I say we work in that order, I mean you start your morning with any new eligibility checks that need to happen, and then you just work through your predetermined processes for each of those categories: eligibility, payment posting, aging follow-up, claim submission. And if you don't end your day with claim submission, that's fine. It doesn't have to be, it can be those 3 over and over until you get to the claim submission category. That's fine. But that's the order.
Yeah, we used a lot of terminology today. So this was a little bit of a heavy dose in this episode that's really specific to revenue cycle management. So if you'd like a full list of definitions, see the show notes and you'll find a link to all the terminology used.
We're going to actually end this episode by drawing something called a case study card, which we're hoping to draw every episode. And this is where we're going to look at real life situations that are related to the topic of the day. So we know as seasoned strategists that studying past games is key to future success. So we're doing these case studies cards as a way to study real life scenarios. It just makes me think of like all the football movies where they watch their prior games.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to watch tape, basically.
We're going to watch tape, yes. We're going to show you the game in action You will be seeing some wonderful successes, but you will also be seeing some really big blunders. And when we do blunders, if we do not have permission to share these stories, they will be anonymous.
Yes.
But we've seen a lot of case study cards. So today, for today's case study card, there's not really anything that is super likened to the territories of the board. So we really just wanted to tell you about a little bit about us, a little bit about Practice Solutions, which is the company that we run that does billing. So I want to throw it to Jeremy because this kind of all started with Jeremy and his entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. So in 2016, Kathryn and I had been working at the same manufacturing company here in Michigan, and we wanted to build a company of our own. And so we had multiple years of experience in the mental health field, very much on the administrative side, and we're working jobs that we found that could pay the bills. And I came home almost every day, I think, with ideas for starting businesses.
And they weren't. I mean, oh man, some of these business ideas.
They were doozies.
They were not worth considering, my friends. I mean, believe me, one time he came home and he Jeremy has this habit of having these really strange musings at night right before bed. And so I'm sitting there on my pillow trying to sleep and he's like, what if we bought an airplane, a jet plane, if that, and we could sell these planes for profit and blah, blah, blah. I was like, we know nothing about planes and where in the world are we going to store a plane?
It was a bad idea. At the plane place or wherever they store.
The plane place.
Wherever it works. So then one night we got a call from my mom, actually, who was a social worker at a community mental health center in Montana. And she was concerned because jobs were being cut and a lot of her colleagues were jumping into private practice. And she asked us if we could help do the billing since we had a considerable amount of experience actually doing it at that point. And that was kind of it. We started building out billing processes.
Yeah, I mean, that was not an idea that I was like, Jeremy, this is a stinker of an
She
idea.
didn't say no. Yeah.
I was like, oh,
which is a yes.
I've heard a lot of really bad ideas. This is something that we know how to do, we're passionate about. And at the time, it was serving people that we knew and loved.
Yeah.
Not that we don't love all of our customers, but it's a little different when it's your mom.
Well, yeah, we built out our processes with our friends in mind, right? And if it was good enough for our friends and my mom and others that we were close with, we thought, well, shoot, maybe it might be good enough for others. So
we also learned that the need for the type of service that we were offering was massive. It's not to say that there weren't other billing companies.
It was big. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun.
So in March of 2017, we became official and we launched Practice Solutions. So we're 8 years and counting into that, formalized venture. We've come a long way since then, but our mission has really remained the same. We want to remove the burden of billing and educate around best revenue cycle management practices so that providers we work with can focus on patient care. So this podcast was really birthed out of the part of the mission that includes education. Something that we've noticed over the years is that this stuff just seems so shrouded in mystery. And I just want to tell you, you don't have to do it yourself, but it's not that hard to understand. We want to empower you to focus on patient care, and sometimes that really only happens through the peace of mind of education.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So now we offer multiple billing services and resources with the intention of addressing all of your needs wherever you are, whether you're just getting started, whether you're overwhelmed, you're coming home to cold pizza and you need to outsource to get your time and sanity back, or for those who need in-house support, your practice has grown, you're very successful, but you're not sure if your billing department's doing a good job, or whether you are sure your billing department's not doing a good job and you need some support.
Or it's doing great and all of a sudden your really great biller quit.
That's right.
I mean, we have so many different options.
Yeah, it's a big point of failure that we want to help you hear. So you'll hear more about that over the course of the podcast.
Yeah, but over the years, we've really refined these billing processes and isolated how we communicate these RCM,
procedures, right? Yeah.
Concepts. Really
our playbook
with clarity and simplicity. So I hope that by looking at the first 6 territories, you're starting to see that we've really painted a picture for how this all works, and everything has categories and there's reasons why they're in these orders, and it's honestly been because over the years we've found a lot of problems with doing it other ways. So yeah, we are maybe being arrogant enough to call them best practices, but I think that they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for listening to our first episode, and we hope you join us next time on The Claim Game.
Yeah, next week we're going to be talking about payer selection, partner selection. How do you pick a good insurance mix? And you do not want to miss it because there's some really interesting stuff. Get ready to do a little bit of math.
That's right. Yeah, we'll see you then.
All right, see you next time.
If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.